just in case you don't know, I am currently celebrating 11,000 subs. A few days ago, I saw that the subscriber count was ticking up like immensely, and it kind of freaked me out because I was like people to actually do things like when they reach 10,000 subscribers, that's a pretty big milestone. So I decided to do a simple Q&A just to do things a little more, I guess, casual than what I usually would do. So I'm currently drinking a hard kombucha. Decided to get dolled up because I never get to do that these days, and just, chill out and answer some of these questions that you guys submitted for this Q&A. I really appreciate it because it's exciting to talk about the stuff that I love, and it's really exciting that other people like to talk about it with me. Something that I was talking about with my husband today was all I wanted to do was to be a part of the conversation, and it's really cool to see people having the conversation even when I'm not checking every single comment, even when I'm not checking all the replies. It's perpetuating and I'm not always a part of it, and that's cool. So I'm just gonna go through some of these comments. Hope you guys stick with this because this is not my usual format and I'm kind of camera shy still. So okay, so Gwyneth K asks, how did you get into analyzing storytelling, and what were your first head over heels story obsessions? So when I was in high school, my family got Netflix and I would control the queue. I would always get something for the family and then 2 or 3 movies for me. This was back when they mailed the discs, obviously. So I was watching movies like 2001: Space Odyssey, Spirited Away, this great movie called Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and I was like age 15 at that time. I really wanted to work in film. I wanted to go to film school, but due to a series of events, I ended up not pursuing film in college. And fast forward in 2016, I was getting back into film and I decided I wanted to make a YouTube channel because I wanted to, be a part of the conversation. I was definitely not as versed in film theory as I am now. I felt really bummed about what I was making, and I didn't really have anything that inspired me. So I walked away from it until I saw The Last Jedi. It was just everything I wanted in a story. Of course, at the center of the story was Ben and Rey. I owe so much to the Reylo community for leading me down this rabbit hole into feminine fandom and feminine story and just mythology. Everything that I could possibly ever want was in this particular film, depending on what lens you wanted to view it from. There's just this wealth of information on literature and storytelling, film theory, so much that this group of mostly women, but some notable men as well, shared with me, and I am so lucky to have found them. To backtrack a little bit, my first story obsessions were probably Harry Potter, the series called Everworld that was written by K.A. Applegate, but for film it was everything. Music videos, CSI Las Vegas, Lord of the Rings, exploitive reality television, niche film genres. I just wanted to know everything about film. Anne McCann asks, is it okay to watch film with the man's gaze, or should we boycott them? I really like this question because it's something I never explicitly said, even though I probably should have. Male gaze is not a bad thing. There are things that occur in male gaze media that can be bad for intersectionality, but the gaze is merely referring to by men for men. And things that come from men or are made for men are not inherently bad. The other side of this question, I think, is asking, how do we go forward in promoting media that is not of the male gaze? I don't think it's healthy to boycott male gaze media, but it is important to understand when it is promoting toxic masculinity or when it doesn't have diverse creators. Everyone has different barometers for this sort of thing. Just going forward, if I can give any advice, it's to find media that ignites something in you and celebrate that. And as you celebrate it, just give it a second thought and wonder, why does it speak to you in the way that it does? That's when you discover really interesting things. And just to solidify this point, 2 examples of male gaze media I absolutely love are Fight Club and Into the Wild. They're like the modern male gaze starter pack and they're excellent. Also very, very transformative. Erica Alcantara asks, what would a feminine and masculine gaze or neutral gaze look like? So this is very subjective. A couple of random shows that come to mind are Beastars, Sense8, and Russian Doll. They're radically different from one another, but I do think if you're looking for a sort of neutral gaze, these are good places to start. Master Zen asks, any thoughts on Katja Silverman's work on Mulvey? So I didn't realize that these two were connected in that way, but I do have the book Flesh of My Flesh, and I have read only a few pages, but I'm going to assume I'm going to get a lot out of it. So Sammy Ainsley asks, how long does it take you to make your videos? They're so detailed, intricate, and thoughtful. First of all, thank you very much. Something like my male gaze video was more of a rant I did in like a day-ish. Whereas something like my feminine power fantasy video took me a few weeks. As far as editing goes, it used to take me 1 hour to edit 1 minute of video. But now, with as much practice as I've had, it takes me about 15 minutes to do 1 minute of video. Clipping the right clips is honestly what takes the longest, because sometimes I'll get in my head and I'll be trying to find the perfect example of something that I know, but of something I can't remember. It's definitely the hardest part of making these videos. I do focus on the quality of it. When the quality slips or when I'm being a little bit too lazy about it, I feel like absolute garbage. So I do try to make something that I would want to watch again, something that I can be proud of. Sandra Samela also asked how I make my animations. I do not make my animations. I use Filmora 10, which is an awesome video editing software. You know, I definitely recommend it. I think it's the best for people who are amateur editors and like getting into filmmaking or just YouTubing or vlogging, anything like that. With Filmora, they give you an elements library of sorts, and depending on, you know, your subscription level, you can get different types of animations. They have a really good array of free animations. And what I tend to do is I manipulate these as much as I can so that it looks organic and that it fits the points that I'm trying to make in my video. I don't have the skill of drawing. Ryan Davis asks, book/YouTube channel recommendations. I don't actually watch a lot of YouTube in terms of video essays. I watch a lot of YouTube in general, but I don't watch the stuff that I tend to make, mainly because so much of the content feels uninspired or feels like it's focusing on things that make me sad. I also worry about comparing myself to other content creators. There are so many amazingly smart people out there, and when I do watch video essays that feel so inspired, I feel very inadequate. I still have a lot of self-insecurities about that sort of thing. But if I'm watching YouTube content regularly, it's gonna be on music, K-pop. I do try to subscribe to people that are making honest content. That said, I will recommend my good friend MC's channel, What the Fiction. I also had a recommendation in these questions to watch The Queen's Gambit, and I have. But I will direct you to watch What the Fiction's video essay on the show, where she outlines Beth's journey alongside Maureen Murdoch's The Heroine's Journey. As for book recommendations, if you're looking for nonfiction about myth, I always recommend The Heroine's Journey by Maureen Murdoch. If you want to dive deeper than that, though, I would start with Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and then kind of go into Murdoch's work after that. Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Little Book on the Human Shadow by Robert Bly, and Goddesses by Campbell are also staples for me. Gay for Satan asks, are cisgender gay men affected by the feminine gaze? I also get a lot of variations of this question on my video about feminine gaze. So I don't want to speak for a whole group of people that I don't identify with. I think that everyone's affected by gaze. G-A-Z-E. I feel like I have to specify now. What you see, what you're gazing on, especially in mainstream media, especially stuff that you grow up with, affects you no matter your sexuality or gender or race, and especially to those considering themselves effeminate. Our mainstream media tells us that that is weakness. So from what I've experienced, when you see media that relishes in the power of the feminine, I think that really rocks you to your core. Agata I think it's pronounced. She says that she sees how the heroine's journey is closely linked to the realization that being a woman is more than being a man or being loved by a man. And just to say, I totally understand where you're coming from. They say that it's a sort of emancipation. There's this idea in Maureen Murdoch's The Heroine's Journey, and within her work in general, there's this idea of the inner man, which is essentially a woman's animus. In Jungian terms, the animus is the masculine part of a woman. Even in Robert Bly's work, he talks about this. These are all authors that are very inspired by Carl Jung's work. Bly talks about that young girls will put away that part of themselves, that masculine part of themselves at a very young age in order to be more feminine, to basically prepare themselves for a husband. But that part of you always is with you. You're just carrying it behind you in your shadow. The longer you drag it behind you, the more corrupted it can possibly get, the more evil it can become. It's baggage. So the goal is to take that part of you, bring it back into yourself, and kind of connect those pieces back together. You can't destroy it. You want to incorporate it within yourself. So for a lot of people who are traditionally raised as girls, they put that part away, and then they're gonna have to take that masculinity back out, and they're gonna have to deal with it. Combining the masculine and the feminine aspects of yourself leads to your own uniqueness. So yeah, the goal is not to be like men, and it's not to be loved by men. It's to figure out who you are. Seriously, this stuff is so good. So Juno asks, I know you talked about feminine gaze in movies, but maybe you can touch upon it in a general sense when it comes to generalizations about how women can or should show/use their own bodies. I actually looked up this picture, and the Emma Watson photo in question is not even scandalous in my opinion. I think it's great that women are embracing their naked bodies in both sexual and non-sexual ways. There's just so much shame associated with nakedness of the female form, and it mostly comes from Christian doctrine, so I'm not gonna say what anyone should or should not do, but I do think stripping away the shame from naked bodies and sexual bodies is always a good thing. Also, it's really hard to determine gaze, G-A-Z-E, in photo shoots. Specifically high fashion photo shoots. There's often no context, there's no story, there's no obvious intention. Both women and men could love and enjoy and desire the being in this picture for completely different reasons. Jacob Holmes says, you mentioned the American monomyth in one of your older videos. Do you plan on talking about that more in the future? As of now, I don't have anything planned. But I do think that the American monomyth is a very interesting way and a very interesting lens to view story through. Jewett's work tends to take this lens that religion is really important to a culture's mythology. I talked a lot about it in my video ranting about Tross. It will probably continue to come up in my videos. Each time it does, I will absolutely dig back into Jewett's work, maybe from a different perspective, maybe different books that he's written. I really enjoyed reading The Myth of the American Superhero by him. It was very cathartic after dealing with everything with The Rise of Skywalker. It just helped me realize a lot about the American mythology that is so ingrained in every single thing that we consume. So, Mara, will you make a list of stories that you think are done right? The simplest answer is no. I don't like to say anything is objectively good or bad. I was raised on that YouTube media and I don't agree with it. I loved it for years, and then I got to an age where I realized, it doesn't matter if something is good or bad. It doesn't mean anything. Your consumption of media is entirely subjective. So I will tell people the media that I love, and I hope that by pointing out, this is my perspective on this thing, I think it'll help people just be more conscious consumers. Hey Radical Kiwi asks, what are good examples of movies made with feminine gaze? I have gotten this question so many times, and it's on one hand it's kind of frustrating because I made a whole video about this where I used a ton of examples, but also the video was basically saying, I don't know what feminine gaze is in a simplistic way. I think it's rather complex, and I think it's still not going to be clear until we have an industry that is controlled by women. And that's, like, I'm sorry to say that, but that's just the truth. Anything that is not cisgender white male gaze is different. It's breaking the mold. It's good. Like, we should embrace anything that's not that. But that also doesn't mean that, like, white cisgender men cannot create feminine gaze. So it's very complex. And like I said before, it's very subjective as well. It does tie in with this last question as well. The stuff that I like and that I think use the feminine gaze still might have issues, either technically or with lack of diversity. So please take my recommendations with a grain of salt. I will give some examples of shows that I think use the feminine gaze. And there are also shows, honestly, that I just really love. The Queen's Gambit, obviously, Anne with an E, Big Little Lies, and Orange is the New Black.
It's a lot of anger. It's a lot of fear. Well, of course there was with you right there. You was spooking vampires.
I can say that these are undoubtedly feminine gaze. I would also say that a ton of Asian media is feminine gaze. Some good recommendations are Strong Woman Bong Soon, Coffee Prince,
진짜 왔냐?
Meteor Garden, Ashes of Love,
道有丹田气海，竟然有疾。
Bromance, and Good Morning Call. So yeah, that's basically everything. I think I had some questions in there I couldn't quite answer in this particular format. If you've made it this far in the video, then you should know that if you ever want to get my attention, please connect with me on Twitter or respond to my community post. I'm trying something new in where I'm not checking all the comments all the time. So I hope that this helped you get to know me a little bit better, and let me know in the comments what your favorite video has been of mine, and also let me know what aspects that you're interested in seeing going forward. Obviously, I'm very connected to these ideas about gaze, G-A-Z-E, but also I just really like the idea of looking into how much gender plays a role or how much it doesn't play a role, and that's my intention going forward. But what is it that you have enjoyed that I've brought up, maybe that I haven't thought of in a while, or, just let me know. So again, thank you so much for watching this, and cheers.
You're not the only one. You're not the only one.